And they're going to be bringing their Pooches, Champ and Major, to the White House. They're also going to be picking up a cat. I don't know if you like cats or not, Alan, but that's pretty cool because one of them is a rescue dog, isn't it?
I believe so. That's what I hear, yes.
So, again, we haven't had a pet in the White House. It hasn't been seemingly very pet-friendly. Do you think this is going to soften up the image of the White House, give it a more homey image?
Well, I think that's part of it. Warren Harding was the first to really use Laddie Boy, an Airedale Terrier, to build support in a way. He was the first celebrity dog. There are many White House dogs. He was the first one to sort of exploit that aspect. Certainly FDR did as well. But I think it softens an image at times. I think I saw a cartoon about the current president that if he had a dog, he might have had, carry more states, things like that.
Alan Favsal, Executive Director of the American Kennel Club's Museum of the Dog in New York, is joining us today. We're talking about presidential pooches and so much more. Alan, you have a really interesting road that took you to become Executive Director at the Museum of the Dog. I'm sure there are pet lovers that are listening to us right now that would like, hey, how do I get that job? But you were actually headed for medicine. You were in pre-med, weren't you?
I was pre-med at UCLA, and I went into art history, and then just kept going. Stanford Graduate School, and then became a curator, and then worked in the auction world. And in the auction world, I started a sale. I brought it over from England in 1999, and ran that for 17 years. And one of our beneficiaries of our charity branch was the AKC. And so when I knew that their collection, I knew dog art. And when they needed a director, I think I referred to being a short list of one.
Well, it's got to be a great job. Can you describe an average day for you? Do you have an average day at the Museum of the Dog? What's life like there?
Well, it's a very small museum, so I do everything from soup to nuts, from contacting donors and getting paintings, collecting paintings from around the world, to taking out the garbage and being a shipping clerk.
Do you have a dog, Alan?
I do have a Welsh Springer Spaniel who's crazy, and Spaniels are. If anyone not learned a Spaniel, it sort of runs in the trait. But we love their enthusiasm and their energy, and they're very pretty. We have a very pretty Welsh Springer Spaniel named Gemma.
And where'd you get the name Gemma from?
She's named after this is my art history. She's named after a Roman gem called the Gemma Augustea in the Kunsthistorische Museum in Vienna.
How about that? We're going to talk about his art involvement in just a second here because he's one of those guys who tells you how much your paintings are worth on Antiques Roadshow. But before we get there, I wanted to wrap up talking about presidential pooches. We've just some presidents off the top of my head, and I wanted to have you comment about their dogs over the years. President Biden is going to be having a couple of dogs in the White House here in the next couple of weeks. So Teddy Roosevelt, I imagine he would have had some like hounds or something.
Well, he had a lot of dogs. He had quite a menagerie, being an outdoorsman, had a large family. He had a St. Bernard and many other dogs. I did want to interject. You mentioned about Harry Truman.
Yes.
What a friend. He was given a dog, a very sweet little Cocker Spaniel puppy, which he promptly gave away to his doctor, and it really didn't help his image.
Oh, boy, he made a mistake there.
Yeah.
FDR was a true dog lover, wasn't he?
He did. He had a number of dogs, but the one most famous was Falla. And if you ever get a chance, it's on YouTube called the Falla speech, where the Republicans were excoriating him for supposedly leaving his dog on an Aleutian island, spending millions of dollars to get it back. And it's a hysterical speech with great comedic timing by the great president.
It's called the Falla speech. It's F-A-L-A. That was the name of the dog, Falla. And,
Scottish Terrier.
Okay, Scottish Terrier. Right. The president was visiting the Aleutian Islands during World War II and accidentally left his dog there and then sent a destroyer back to pick it up. And apparently it cost like $20 million to go pick up his pooch.
Well, that was the rumor.
Yeah, yeah. So whether or not that really happened, I don't know. But if you left your dog over there and you were the president, wouldn't you send a Navy destroyer to pick up your puppy? Of course you would.
Probably.
Yeah, other presidents with pooches. JFK, was he a dog lover?
JFK had quite a menagerie as well. They had ponies, dogs, about 9 dogs, I believe. There's a great book, Dogs of Camelot, out there. And Charlie was a Welsh Springer Spaniel who was quite a rascal.
Okay, a rascal. And Ronald Reagan, he had dogs, right?
He had several dogs. A Bouvier de Flanders comes to mind, and also a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel.
Okay. And the Bushes had dogs. I remember Millie.
Millie was very famous. We have a great painting of Millie in our museum, and a letter from Barbara Bush. And then, of course, George Bush had Spot, and Barney and Miss Beasley. We have paintings of them as well.
And how about that? And then Obama's famous dog.
Obama was interesting. He promised the kids, Sasha and Malia, to have a dog, and so there was a poll taken by the AKC, and 40,000 people came back. They all wanted to suggest a poodle, but he went with a Portuguese water dog, Bo.
Bo the dog. I remember that. Well, I wonder why I didn't go with a poodle. I've got friends in town here that just they don't get anything but poodles, but they get the big, huge, gigantic poodles. Ones you can almost put a saddle on and ride, those big guys. Joining us this afternoon, by the way, is the executive director of the Museum of the Dog in New York. Alan Favsal is joining us. And among other things, Alan is part of Antique Roadshow. Alan, what do you do with Antique Roadshow?
Well, I've been appraising paintings for since the beginning. We started there. They came to us. I was working for an auction house for sponsorship. They said, well, we didn't have money to sponsor it, but we'd give you some appraisers. And so we ran around the country for 25 years, going to anywhere between 3 and 8 cities myself a year.
And you've been in North Dakota?
I've been not Fargo, but to Bismarck. We were in Bismarck, and I made the front page of the Bismarck paper that Sunday after.
What were you doing on the front page? Were you appraising a painting?
Yes, it was. It's so I made the front page of the New York Times for finding a lost painting. It's the last time I want to be on the front page of the New York Times.
Did you get some feedback
on
being on the front page of the New York Times?
Yeah, I was on the Daily Show and a lot of other programs as well. It was the lost Rembrandt had been stolen from San Francisco years ago.
Okay, and you were the expert on that issue?
It showed up my doorstep.
No kidding.
Yeah, this guy sort of wanted to dump it, and sort of figured, well, dump it at an auction house.
How much was that worth?
Well, it turned out to be a fake Rembrandt.
Okay.
The guy stole the wrong one.
Did he ever get in trouble?
They never found him. It was like 25 years after the fact.
Okay.
And there were 4 paintings that were stolen, and he got 3. The good one was probably sold a long time ago.
Okay. Well, she dodged that bullet. So, what's the coolest painting you've ever appraised, discovered? And I'm talking about that maybe surprised you, or the value that you gave it. What's the number one that you think about when you think of your 25 years with Antique Roadshow?
Well, it's one of the things people always ask if you're inflating these things. And I had a fellow show up with a very important painting by James Beard. And the artist, if you go through the records, he's only made about $25,000 of paintings, only sold for that much. But this was an extraordinary painting of Henry Clay, who was an important figure in American history. And I talked to a colleague and said, this has got to be worth about $500,000. So to take that leap of faith, $25,000, and say everything he sold before that's like 10, 15, 20, and say this is worth $500,000. Afterwards, we don't really contact people. They contacted me. It was on loan to a museum, and they finally sold it for $700,000. So I was proven right.
My gosh. Did it ever surprise you, your 25 years with Antique Roadshow, about the things that people had in their homes that they brought out to you guys?
You see a whole lot of different things. I once ran across different situations, not my specialty, but I ran across the first sketch for Ravel's Bolero, of all things, one of the most famous 20th century works of music.
Wow. And you got a value did you place on that?
Oh, back in '89, about $300,000, probably worth about double that, at least, I would think.
Nowadays, yeah. Wow, that's absolutely incredible. So what's in the future for the Museum of the Dog? Alan, by the way, I want to call him Doctor. Alan Favsal is the executive director of the Museum of the Dog. Do you have anything planned? I know like in this last spring before the COVID situation hit, you had a dog a painting exposition, did you not, on dogs? Are you doing anything like that? Any plans like that?
We always have rotating exhibitions. We had one called Mush about sled dogs. We had Togo and Balto, those famous dogs. It talks about that. but we had presidential dogs. Right now, we just opened Hollywood dogs. We have a lot of movie posters and other shots of Hollywood people, Zsa Gabor, Lena Horne, Duke and Duchess of Windsor, and their dogs.
And so when you're going to New York, I know the first thing on everybody's mind is probably going to Broadway plays when we get the COVID behind us and stuff like that. But when you're in New York, make sure that you go visit this man, Alan Favsal, the executive director of the Museum of the Dog in New York City. Alan, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your expertise on presidential pooches, and hope things will be a lot more calm when we make that transition over to the next president and we have dogs back in the White House, and hopefully things will get back to normal there. Alan, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it, and hope you have a good evening.
It's been my pleasure.
Our pleasure. Get back in that car and get out of here. Thank you, Doug.
Right.
Thank you, Alan. KFGO time coming up on 4:24. You're listening to The Drive on the Mighty 790 KFGO.